Hello, everyone. Welcome. Gather here, gather here. We have a hot topic today. This is your hostess, Dr. Marceline and Didi Aparoji. Welcome to NDISCO'S Village Meeting Podcast, where we discuss African society and culture. Today we are, venturing into episode 27, series 2. The reason why I say this is a hot topic is because it's it's discussed out there among the young ones and parents alike. It is a touchy subject, and that is bringing a lot of anxiety, both to the African parents and their children of marriage age. So today, the topic we're talking about is again on the African dad and mom, the African parents. Um, the question today is, and this, like I shared, we delved now into the series where, or the aspects to deal with a lot of the complaints that come from these young ones that I talk to on a regular basis, the young adults. They think Auntie has a listening pair of ears without judging them. And so they come and share with me what is on their minds. I don't judge them. I don't give them answers. I just ask questions and answer as much as I can. Else I go into research and ask. But this other aspect to this topic is also parents. The parents are worried, and they sometimes ask me also, talk about that. Could you talk about this topic also to our children who are complaining so that they know our thoughts? So sometimes I'm caught in between. It's not like I don't have the same issues that everybody has. Sometimes maybe not as deep, but I see it from both sides of the aisle. And I tend not to really judge. I try to understand. Okay. So today's topic is the young ones are asking, why do parents keep forcing them to get married? Okay. Um, a lot of them, the moment they hit a certain age, 20, 21, 22, especially the ones that are really embittered about this, are the girls, the young adult females who, are being compared to the past when, some of us who married young will tell you that when girls after maturity or when they are getting mature, they are asked to just get married, and not that they are forced. Some decide among themselves that they want to do this at an early age. So it depends on who you ask. So this is one of their complaints. So let's delve into it. Um, the young adults, we know that the institution of marriage, which could be really great for those who understand it very well, or really bad for those who don't. It depends again on who you ask. Um, it is a changing landscape, and this is what we all agree on. When you look back to the past, to our forefathers, to our ancestors, to our grandparents, to our parents, there is this sliding scale, or actually I will call it a paradigm shift. Um, which we call here a changing landscape, is that things are moving in a different direction. And it depends again on who you ask. Something is going down the drain. Some think, oh, it's better now because people are now beginning to get their voices heard or whatever. Again, I'm not taking sides. I'm just airing what I heard. And then I went into research to see what others are saying, especially Africans all over the world. And when we talk about marriage for young African adults, we're not just talking about those in diaspora. We are also talking about those at the homestead in all parts of Africa. And in some cases, they're not even, um, left on the sides of African young ones. They're the young ones all over the world, really, are experiencing this changing landscape in marriage. So this topic, but today we are restricting our talks and our considerations on the African young adults and not the rest of the races, because there could be a little bit of differences. So this is actually a rich, complex, and evolving rapidly across the continent. It's evolving, and this is why what I'm doing today is not is just creating the awareness of what this other side is saying or this other side is saying. Because there is no way we can talk about this topic all in the period that I have. It's going to be maybe a whole day a workshop or a whole day seminar. So, but we all agree it's complex and it's very robust. You can peel it, it's like peeling onions, and you can peel layers and layers off of this topic. And it's evolving rapidly, it's moving as we go. Every day it changes a whole lot. So while marriage has traditionally been a central institution in our societies, especially in Africa, it is often tied to cultural identity, to social stability, and we can go back to old days where it also plays a part in the economy of the household. Remember when our grandparents and all that used to marry more than like 2 or 3 wives, so that the yam season or the farming season, all these wives will be able to put hands together, including their children, to help bring the food home, cultivating the farm and bring home, including rearing animals. Okay, so that was what the tradition was all about. And it still is in most cases back in rural Africa. The perspective and behaviors of today's young adults of marrying age, though, is going on the other flip side of the coin. They're increasingly being shaped, their thought of marriage, by the modern influences around us, education, urbanization, globalization. And we're going to explain this a little bit as we go in. Okay. The traditional, if we dig deeper into the traditional views of marriage, and one thing I want to do today is not to dwell on each area, because this is an awareness aspect. Each item here can be debated on. Some areas, due to their own tradition, will differ or will argue against what other group is doing. There's always this thing about marriages and steps to them, and the intricacies of how each area do their own observation. So traditionally, marriages in many African cultures, they carry out different functions, like we said. The community, for example, community and family union. In Igbo land, for example, my tribe, in Nigeria, West Africa, Africa, um, marriage is regarded as a tie that binds families together, two different families, or into a union, or communities, and communities, not even all, and communities. And then today we're finding that it's even binding nations, not only Africa, but outside of Africa. But traditionally, it was what it was supposed to be: community, villages, and families together. It's often arranged. Some parts used to arrange marriage, just like in the Asian aspects. They could be arranged, or they could be heavily influenced by family elders. So we still have that tradition of the elders asking a lot about the other family. Both families actually asking about each family that they are interacting with, to know if they are suitable enough to get married into or go marry from. So that still upholds up to today. One of the things we tell the young African is before you marry, go check the background. But today also, apart from checking the backgrounds of, and the Igbo person knows what I'm talking about, there are certain, what do I call it now, status or strata that people will look at, and class, that's the word I'm looking for, um that I don't want to mention here because it's also controversial, as to, are you marrying in today's, what do they have, so they look into their backgrounds, as against now when they may not be looking deeper, but they are having tests to know, whether disease is running the families, and more. The next is economic alliance. Again, in the olden days, like we said, traditionally, even now in some areas, we're talking about bride price. That's the alliance there. The bride price, the dowry, which signifies the seriousness of the commitment. You see, this is where some people who don't understand other people's culture, again, this is based in communities. Some cultures do it differently. For example, in dowry, some people will say, "Oh, you are asking for too much money. You are selling your child." But some communities will say, "No, I'm not selling my child. I am doing exactly what I am asking, is because of this, to signify to you that this is serious. When you take my daughter, you don't maltreat her, or you don't, mess with her. That's your commitment. This money is not to sell her, but to also see if you're capable of really taking care of her." So I would leave that out, that because some people understand what I'm saying, that this has really been there. There's something in social media the other time when I am from Mbise, my community in Mbise, they're known for having beautiful, industrious, and very hardworking young ladies, and very educated. And I'm not saying that because I am from there, but that is what the world says. It's not just me. Where there was a rumor or propaganda that somebody was asking for 1 million naira as a bride price, and that, some people were really making all types of jokes over the social media. But, the issue, as a typical Mbise person, they were like, if you don't like it, go away. It's not because they don't love you to come marry them, it's because you are not understanding that culture, and screaming about the 1 million naira instead of looking at exactly why you came, who you came for, and what the future holds. I'll leave that at there. Let's talk about the social expectations. A rite of passage, or rite de passage, like the French will say it, and in English we say rite of passage into adulthood is part of this social expectation. That is what marriage is all about. It's often tied to respect and the status in the community. So this is our view. A young person who has gotten to that age of marriage, whether the male or female, that's considered really an honor to be able to have grown to that level. Okay, and because they are married, their status or statuses now change to a higher level, regarded now as a staunch member of the community, and that's a rite of passage or rite of passage. Another reason, traditional aspect to how they view marriage is for procreation, and I think this is universal. Okay, in in our traditional, our ancestors and in our communities in Africa, mostly, even today with the modern twist to that, marriages are for procreation. the continuation of the family lineage is what is being regarded as. And in many places, still, it's a core purpose of marriage. And so, that is why sometimes when a woman is married into a family and she doesn't produce a child, um, you know, there's some frown and going on over that. Um, but in the past, people didn't even want to know or find out if it was really on the woman or the man not being able to fulfill this function of procreation. And so a whole lot has gone through that or under that aspect of procreation. While on the other hand, we're talking traditional now compared to the rest of the world in some places where people don't even want to have children, they have their dogs and all that. But in the African culture or tradition, procreation is still, high up there because the African person believes when they are gone, they have to have somebody replacing or answering their name. Okay, so we move on. So now let's get to we talked about tradition, our ancestral outlook on marriages. Now, as we say, the tides are changing, the paradigms are shifting, and everything is moving next door. So there is a shift. The attitudes about marriage among our young adults are shifting. So several factors are contributing to a change in this view of marriage by our younger ones today. The first is education and career opportunities. Remember, traditionally in the past, many didn't go to school, so they again were farmers or they had skills that are just based on making sure there is food on the table, and so you are expected to marry young or marry at an expected age to start again procreation and all that and forming unions of families together. But today, because of education, now the girls are going to school. They want to complete their education. And some of the time, the period or the length of the education, goes beyond the community expected age of marriage. I don't know who came up with the age, but the expectation, as well as the biological clock that ticks. So but education goes beyond that. And as they pursue, one degree after the other to the tertiary level and to get terminal degrees as well. And after they finish schooling, of course, they have to look for jobs. And again, by the time they start looking and get a job that they are climbing the hierarchy in the job, marriage is coming second um, um, in the line. So as the men. The young adult males are also following that. They now, since the girls now are going to school, they don't want to lag behind. So they are also going to school to get a job, to get a home that they could be contributors along with their wives. So education is a really big one that is shifting all these attitudes. Urbanization, okay? Um, Again, let me say something about education again, that more young people um, are delaying marriage in favor of financial independence. And that is what I was trying to, say when they said they get a job and they keep trying to make money to be stable enough um, and to make, get their personal growth in whatever career or profession they have. So when we move to urbanization and migration, we're talking about urban settings and cities, city life. There is more exposure to diverse lifestyles. Okay. um, parents are no longer overlooking what this young one is doing. You know, when they are close to their parents will like every time breathe down their necks to say, okay, you finished this. Are you looking for a wife to marry and all that? No, nowadays parents are somewhere else and these young ones are somewhere else, and more individual choice in partners. Before, everybody used to agree on, okay, I like this girl versus I like this other girl, you know, which one is it? And by then, these children were bringing these girls, when they bring one home, you know that, okay, this is the one they intend to marry or something to that effect. But you know, those are far between now. No, parents are no longer helping make choices for their children's, marriages now. Migration to work as well, or education often delays marriage or separates traditional values from current living conditions. So it's not even of their making. When we say that the young ones don't want to marry, some people say that it's not that they don't want to get married. Some of them really want to do that, but these factors mitigate against their doing that. Now, their own parents, the African parent will say, well, we all were going through all that and then we were getting married. But we'll come to talk about that, of the consequences of what their own children are seeing them go through, of the choices they made in that early marriage aspect. The economic challenges. The economic challenges, you know, today we see, in rural Africa, for example, not even in diaspora, in the cities, in the villages or communities, there is high youth unemployment and economic instability. This, this unemployment, this lack of, having a financial backup or standing, they make it difficult for many to afford marriage or to even raise a family if they are married. So you see somebody who is breeding children, has no job, and doesn't even have a decent home, and the children are suffering, or they have to send them away somewhere else. So many of the young ones don't want to go through that. And most of them, unless they are financially buoyant, they are telling you that the cost of traditional ceremonies and expectations from, if it's especially the guys, the young adult male African, it's really scared of having no money to carry, or the cost of traditional ceremonies and the expectations, like the bride price. They are discouraged in some cases, to not even venture, you know. But little did they know that some parents, some of these African parents, may even waive that if they see that you're going to take care of their, little girls. So, and there have been cases where even the young African female has, been known to help the young African male towards, a bride price or whatever. Again, there's a whole lot going on. The changing roles and the gender inequality is playing another part. Young African women, or adult, young African adults, women, are questioning traditional roles nowadays and seeking equality in relationships. Now, this is really a far practice from what their grandmothers or their mothers, and stepping back that way in the past did. But again, the change in the environment, the shifting attitudes of today's day-to-day, living, is making them look at it that way. Sometimes we blame the young ones. No, we should look at everything that is being presented to them. And somebody has said the other day to me, why are you defending these young ones? I am not defending them. I am understanding. I'm trying to understand where they're coming from. And I encourage all African mothers and fathers, listen, get where they're coming from, read, research, talk to people, and understand what is going on. We cannot be pushing our own agenda of what we know when we knew that and all that. And we need to also understand that our own generation, whether you are baby boomer or before then, you need to also realize and you think back that you may have married differently from your mother's era or your dad's era. So there is this shifting paradigm going on every step as we go. Okay. So they're questioning the roles, these young African females, the traditional roles. Why must we be in the house and just cook without? We went to school. We need to also be at the job place. And when we come back from job, we are not expecting everybody to expect everything from us as before. We're going to divide this work, or you take your share of it, I'm taking my share of it. It's no longer when the young African male will go to work, bring home the bacon, like they say, and then the woman will sit and cook that and all that. Now, the young females are saying, look, we are also going out there to kill the pig, excuse me, and we are bringing home the bacon. And it's not fair for you to ask us to go fry the bacon, so to speak, while you sit and watch TV, being the male. So that is what is going on. Men, in turn, the young African male, in turn, are also facing evolving expectations, excuse me, around partnership and masculinity. Excuse me. So, pardon me. When they were growing up or being raised, these young African males were raised to be the male of the family, the masculine aspect, to be the head of the household, and to say what goes. Sit and wait for everybody else to do stuff, to see themselves as the breadwinner. But today, the cost of living is so high that it's unfair to look at that young male to be the sole breadwinner of the family. And so, what others or their parents or their forefathers have taught them is, oh, as the male, if you're not bringing home the bacon, if you're not taking care of your family, making sure that there is transport, there is food, there is shelter, and all that, you're no longer a man. That's not true. The reason why you may have married in this young lady who is, also African, or from anywhere else for that matter, you are saying, come, let us be partners. You do a little bit and I do a little bit because of today's way of living. So that is where we are. The expectations are evolving because you no longer have to sit back and say, hey, I need this or I need that, talking to the young lady. You got to contribute in every way, not just that you went to work and come back. So let's look at the impact of social media, which is also part of the shifting attitude. Okay. Again, the social media, the pop culture, they are impacting, this attitude, new attitude of the marriage. Platforms like Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, YouTube, all these are influencing ideas about love, about romance, and about relationships. Now, it used to be when people were young, like when we were out there, um, there used to be letter writing, a male writing the female, and back and forth. Um, those days, there weren't, all these social media stuff, and then you get to know people. There was time enough to get to know people, understand them, and weigh enough whether you can or cannot be with this person. Today, it's at a swipe of the finger on the screen, and it's like shopping, the people online, and looking at people, and then you say, yes, this matches and that matches. That is what is going on today. And so the relationships and love, romance is being, as transit as the social media that we all um, look at. Okay, so the trends now, from what we have said, is shifting. These are the trends. The trend is the delayed um, marriage. The delayed marriage, it is what it is. Okay. The average age of first marriage is rising across many African countries. Like I said, young ladies, you talk to some old mothers, grandmothers, they married at 15, at 16, 17, and even some that married young, a lot of us, a lot of people out there, because that's what we wanted to do. Um, but today, it's not out of the ordinary to see a young African male who is almost 40 something before they say, hey, now I've gotten my act together. I want to now get married. You don't be alarmed when you see a young African lady, African female, who is almost going to 30 or 30 something, yet to be married. They are educated, they are working, they are self-fulfilled in most cases. And marriage is to them not the most important thing in their books. So that's delayed. Some of them are practicing cohabitation. So in some urban centers or in some city areas, you have informal unions or people living together in the way of cohabitation. This is increasing. People are test driving marriage, so to speak, before they do that, though often not widely accepted. Many people just don't look at that. Again, religion has a little bit to do with that as well. But this is what is going on. There is also the trend of intra-tribal and interreligious marriages. I don't know how many of you who watched African weddings on social media. You see all colors. It's not just even inter nations of Africa, like a Nigerian marrying to a Malian or a Ghanaian and all that. No, it's even beyond that. You see marriages between a Caucasian and an African, an Asian and an African, an Indian, all that. Um, it's getting rampant now, and people are just looking at it as if it's nothing. It is the norm. It's where you find love. You go there. But people are not thinking deep into the other aspect. That nobody's saying it's wrong. But the moment you start mixing cultures, one of them is going to, suffer. One of the cultures will suffer. So we need, I need to leave it at that. Okay. There is also decline in arranged marriages. We know that in the past, or also in some form of religion, there are arranged marriages, or in some nation, that's their modus operandi to just. But today is declining because the young ones are not having it. They don't want anybody. They don't even want you to match or. Um, I know some young ones who they are bent on not looking at any girls that their parents point their way. So we understand that. They don't want that. They're like, let me find my own. And, if you don't want to alienate them not coming closer to you, you better listen. But it doesn't stop you from talking to them still. They are your children. You talk to them and remind them, starting early, to give them the values of what you will like as somebody joining your family. So let's look at the cultural and religious continuity. Although we've said all this about the trends and some new things coming, but what we need to understand is that despite all this modernization going on, many African young adults still respect tradition and religious norms. One of the things I have a community group that does an annual get together of the youths and their parents and everybody. And I have in the past been invited to 3 or 4 sessions over the years or more to talk to the young African adults about marriage in our community or our tribe. So I have presented like marriage in Igbo land, several. And you could see these young ones eager with questions to know more. And so this is where I encourage the parents to please keep talking about how our traditional marriage used to be, and they can always, sieve through um, what they want to add and what they want to remove, you know. But one aspect that we keep reminding them, and they pick up the traditional ones and the religious ones. So in rural areas, for example, the villages, early marriage is still prevalent due to customs and limited education, especially those who didn't go to school. They still marry that. In some religion, like in the north, they still have early marriages. What we are not condemning early marriages. What we are condemning in most cases that you hear people say are young girls who are not even up to 12 or 13 or 14 being married by older people. That is what we call childhood marriage. That's not what we're talking about here. But we are talking about, young ones who are up to a certain age that is carved out, that they now know the right from wrong. Religious influence also plays a part, whether you're Christian, Muslim, traditional beliefs. These aspects are still strong in shaping marital expectations, especially premarital sex. I know as a Catholic, it's being preached so that you don't get into teenage pregnancy or pre-marital pregnancy and then don't think about abortion and all that. And I'm sure all other denominations think about that as well. Child rearing, some people believe that they don't need to go into contraception. It's like as God sends them to children, they keep bearing. But then some people are cautioning against that because of economic reasons and all that. The gender roles are still playing out there as well. Okay. So the current marriage trends that we talk about, um, the challenges there too could be heavy sometimes, but also there are opportunities for growth. The challenges that we mention are always the tension between cultural versus modern. When we talk about traditional religion, we know that in the traditional, marriage aspect, the church wedding is not even part of that traditional marriage, series. the payment of the bride price, or when the two families come together in what we call a banku, is actually the ultimate marriage end for the culture, the Igbo culture, for example. The wedding in the church is an added step. Okay. So now the young ones are beginning to combine the two. One day you see them do both ceremonies, and sometimes they do the Iwanku ceremony and then decide to do what they call destination weddings nowadays. It's like if you come, you come; you don't come. So if they're living in Lagos, they decide they want to go to um, you know um, uh, Togo to do their wedding, or they want to go to the Caribbean to do their wedding, or somewhere else. So, but the main aspect was that is that in Banku where everybody comes together. So the modern values are still there, but then is being really now has a tug war with the cultural pressure aspects. Economic barriers to marriage is still a challenge. A lot of the communities are still charging a whole lot of, adding a lot of cost to the steps between the first ask and the Ibagu. So you see people producing lists upon lists of so many things, and some of the items on the list could be outrageous in some areas or nothing in some areas. So it depends on who you ask. Gender-based expectations, okay, the inequality, violence in some marital arrangements, it's a big challenge today. It used to be in our traditional aspect, the past. Yes, marriages used to fall apart, or and then come together. People used to just talk over each other or whatever. Now it's getting violent. We have in the news every day the man killed the wife or the wife killed the man and something in between. And these children are watching, the young ones are watching what is going on in the house. Many men, the way they're treating their wives, and vice versa, the way relatives are trying to control what is going on in homes. Brothers, want to now, where their sisters are married, they want to now be the husbands to their sisters instead of the ones that married them. And the sisters, in some aspect, want now to be their brothers' wives, as against the wife they married, just because everybody wants control over what is going on. And that's bringing a lot of challenges to many marriages. Okay. The society we live in always, majority of the time, especially the African based ones, they what I call poke nose into other people's marriages instead of their own. And some of them are making a mess of it. Some in-laws, mothers-in-law, are making a mess of their children's marriages, whether it's their daughters or their sons, messing them up. As also some of the male, the fathers-in-law, um, eh, there have been so many stories, not even of violence, but sexual as well as so many things going on. There are so many challenges going on in today's marriages that the young ones are looking at, and they are scared, and they have mouthed that it's really making them think twice before they step in to this institution. Opportunities, though, is that they are being empowered through education. They now use all they have learned that is no good to redefine marriage on their own terms. Okay? So They are now not, no, I'm not like going to be like my dad and mom or my uncle and my aunt or my sister and the brother or whatever. They want to make their own marriages the way they want to make it. And this is where, if they are going to do that, they build a cladding iron kind of around them and shoo everybody away because they know that the third party comes in to mess things up. And they're redefining marriage as a partnership. They're giving each person a freedom of choice. What are your interests? As against, okay, your interest has to be mine because I married you in, or because I married you in, I'm going to change you. This is the woman talking to the man, or the man saying, you're going to live the way I want it. So the young ones now are finding a way to give freedom to everyone to really enjoy their marriage. They balancing tradition with modernity. The rising awareness of marital rights. Okay. I have a right to this, I have a right to that. Some are doing too much of right ownership. Some just doing the minimum. So everybody is trying to balance what makes everybody breathe. But it's tough out there to be able to do that. Okay. Um, and we know that of all these, the global pop culture is promoting Western ideals of love, marriage, sometimes that clashes with the traditional ones. And again, it's also what is learned. And this is, people say, oh, these people in America or in UK or no, no, no. We have the same type of violence going on in the little village in Africa, Homestead. So it doesn't matter if it happens in Canada or if it happens in Abuja, the same the same thing is going on everywhere. So that we don't fool ourselves by saying, all these people, because they even bring it to the level of professions. The nurses are doing this, the doctors are doing no, it's just a human part. And these young ones are all weighing all this before they venture into anything. So like I shared before, or I told you guys this is not going to be too long, because I want just to create an awareness of these children's complaints, because we can be on this topic forever. But I know that some people who will listen to this will they they will want to have a word or two with me because they may not be happy what they are hearing, but it's a reality. Our children, um, um, they're facing conflicts all over the place. Don't pressure them. You know, some of us have young ones who haven't been married, and even if they are of marital age, people outside us keep pushing, and so some of us have been accused of, oh, you are holding your child back, or you're not forcing your child enough, or your children to go marry. But remember, you can only take the unwilling horse to the stream. You cannot make them drink. You do your own homework of teasing them or sitting down with them and talking like a parent. But at the end of the day, you rather have a healthy young adult of yours who is happy than one that you forced into marriage when they're not ready. And tomorrow you hear one story or the other, or they're not happy. So we need to guard against that. Our African youths or African young ones or young adults are navigating a dynamic and evolving landscape when it comes to marriage. We need to know that. Most of them have witnessed a whole lot going on in their households with their own parents. And some of them will swear off that, no, 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 I'm not going to do this. I'm not going to bring children into this family to witness this. And I'm not going to marry if this is like this or like that. I hear it. They just talk to me like that. And some of them, again, with the education of the young ones, they're like, one of the other ones that made me laugh the other day said, no, no, no. He's a Nigerian. He said, I'm not married Nigerian girls. I'm like, what? What is wrong with Nigerian girls? He said, they can't cook. I'm like, what do you mean they can't cook? Like, okay, they are well educated and all, but somebody forgot to take them to the kitchen to teach them how to cook. And I'm like, okay, what were you doing? Why can't you learn how to cook yourself? So we started laughing. And that is one thing we fail to do. We, as African mothers, we need to teach both the males and females to cook, to learn how to at least take care of themselves. It's just what it is. It is what it is, like they will say. A lot is going on. And we also have to be careful when we send them to schools. That is one of their complaints. Well, you want me to marry a fellow Igbo or a fellow Nigerian, but you send me to school in the middle of, corn country. Who do you think I should be seeing there? I'm seeing, people who are not part of my race. And those are the ones that are my friends. So when we have played a part in not bringing them close to where we want them to be, we have ourselves to blame. And we have community outings, events, but we don't, as adults, African adults, we don't make it comfortable for these young ones to come to. Either we're shouting over each other, we're fighting, and some of them don't understand when they even come what you guys are talking about because you are talking above them. Okay. Yeah, they don't speak the language most of the time, but it doesn't make them not understand the culture. They're not stupid. So if we want our young adults, males and females, to get to know each other, to come together, we have to make really efforts as parents, as adult African moms and dads, create venues that are comfortable for them to come in and meet each other. That is why some of the time things like Umibo Unite, it's a body that brings all these young people together for 3 days or so to talk to them about culture, about money, about how to handle their finance, and these are all professionals. So this is a recommendation. While traditions remain influential, today's young adults will have to understand are redefining marriage with more emphasis on partnership. We got to put that in our brains. They want a partner. They don't want like it's not like they don't want it's still called husband and wife, but we got to be equal. Don't bring in, something that you already had into this marriage. We got to start at equal footing. That is what these young ones are doing because the young one, being a female, is now educated. The young male is educated. They are all, if especially those in the diaspora, are carrying school loans because they are educated. So they got to be partners. Personal fulfillment is still on their radar. They want to personally fulfill themselves, what dreams they have or they had, and all that. They want to get to where they have in their heads. And the mutual respect have to be there or has to be there. They want to respect each other as much as they can, but also make the marriage work. The challenge lies in balancing the cultural identity with modern realities. Parents, this is where we come in. We cannot, just like we do in trying to dictate to them what their careers and professions should be, we do also that in marriages of our children, which they are really embittered by. They don't like that. Okay, we can guide them when they say they want to get married, we could still play the tradition of finding out where this person is from and all that. Hopefully, they are not, from a different race, from another, part of the world where they don't look at what we look at. But, we need to be careful when we step in and try to take over their lives, ensuring that they are ensuring that marriage remains a healthy and empowering institution. So we need to help them do that. And this is where I will end today's podcast. The positive note is that no matter how long they stay, they are going to get married. But we cannot pressurize them. We cannot pressure them into, or force them like some, people will do. And some of the people who really give this headache are not even the parents directly. It's like relatives from the side. Talking about procreation, they forget that there are people who married young and, ended up not having kids or have so many. No mother out there or father who is African doesn't want to be a grandparent. We all do. But at what cost? We got to think about that. Okay? Um, and this is where we call it today. I thank you for listening. And in another episode, I'm going to bring another complaint that the children have. And hopefully you will listen and hear and maybe adjust your approach a little bit after that. Please keep subscribing. The flow of followers are increasing and the sharing, according to statistics from my podcast, publisher, is encouraging. So that means you guys like what I'm doing. So I thank you for tuning in. Remain blessed, and I will see you again shortly. Have a wonderful day. This is Dr. Maslin and M.OPARAOJI signing off. Bye bye.